Hey, it's the Awake Space with Laurie Rivers, and I thought I would do my final podcast from London, not in my room because it's terribly hot. We've got a red heat warning. So I came to a little park at a church that I really enjoy, and that's the church behind me. And that church is where Charles Dickens was married in, I believe, 1838. It's called St. Luke's. And actually, they do really cool things. They've got a little cafe. They're very welcoming, and it's just really nice to see. We're going to go on a walk in just a little bit. We're going to talk about Mercury retrograde. I had a lot of technical difficulties over the last couple of weeks because Mercury in its pre-retrograde phase has been a little bit ornery. I've had internet connection snafus, recording snafus, or my own energy levels have been low. And I didn't want to give you that experience this week. There's a lot coming up as we move through the end of June and into early July. And I thought, wouldn't it just be nice to have something enjoyable and something to ground us in? Because things are about to get a little bit timey-wimey and wibbly wobbly. It's not just Mercury retrograde. We'll talk about that. And I'm not going to do segments in this. We're just going to record this straight through. And you can let me know in the comments if you like it this way or if you prefer the segments that we normally do, because everything is about to change. My trip did not go the way my daughter and I thought it would go. We both had extraordinary things happen. Some of them were pleasant, some of them were less pleasant. Like I got sick for a lot. Anyway, it felt better the last couple of weeks. And then I found out my father isn't feeling well. And that's one of the reasons I was like, that's it. I leave on the 20th, but my mom sounds a little bit tired as well. They're older. Dad'll be 81. Mom is 79. And if you're in the Awake Space community, then you know because I talked about it with you. Life is just a series of unfolding events. And I don't like to look at things as good or bad. I look at things in terms of cycles. And I think that could help us all very, very much if we think about this Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde itself isn't bad. It is annoying. It is little wibbles and wobbles. And so if you think about it, I had trouble recording this podcast this morning. It just like wasn't working. And instead of being overly frustrated and on myself about it coming out late again, as it has most of this trip, I went, well, maybe it's supposed to be done differently. Sometimes when things aren't working, it's an opportunity to switch it up. And that's what I decided to do. Uh, Again, I've been really enchanted by this beautiful building. Look at that beautiful building behind me. It's just a very pretty space here in Chelsea. I've really loved my time here. I will be coming back and forth between England and the United States over time. Hopefully they get the oil situation figured out or alternative fuels, or we're going to be taking a boat. But one way or another, we'll be back. It's been good. And again, even though I have a feeling my father is more seriously sick than either he and mom are admitting to, I'm at peace with whatever happens. So, but do know that when I get back to the States, I'm going to have to hit the ground running and there may be interruptions. So I fly out on the evening of the 25th on Air Morocco, which takes me from London to Casablanca and then Casablanca to LA. A friend is picking me up in LA. And then I'll go to my hotel in Ontario. And then I fly out from Ontario into early afternoon to Billings, Montana. But I get in too late for my mom to pick me up. So I have a hotel at Billings, and then mom picks me up on Sunday, the 28th. I'll try to pre-record the the podcast for next week, or I'll just use a lot of the information and video that I've actually recorded a lot and it just didn't fit into the podcast episode. So I may just make you a montage and give you something fun to listen to because next week is a clusterfuck. But anyway, doesn't mean it's going to be bad for you. Remember, on a personal level, you can have an amazing day, even if all hell seemingly breaks loose. Okay, so don't worry about me. I am going to be hitting the ground running. There is going to be a lot to deal with, and that is part of life. We expect feathered nests when there was never a guarantee of a feathered nest in this lifetime on this planet. Nobody has it perfect. Nobody is without struggle or obstacles, and it's how we meet them that matters. And I hope to model that for you, even if I have big feelings, and I tend to talk about those things in the Awake Space community. Also, we are not doing the 2027 year ahead on the 28th of June. It's been pushed back to July 11th. So if you were wanting to sign up, you still have time. If you signed up for that, make sure you check your spam that you got the email as I sent it out to the whole list from Woke Astrology. So check your spam folders just in case your tickets are still good. It's still the same Zoom link. It's still everything. It's just we changed the date. And so everything will be working out just fine for that. But there is still time. Remember, if you're a patron, you can still sign up with your special savings. It's between now and the end of July, you can save 50 on annual memberships to the Awake Space community. We're going to be hitting the ground with a lot of teaching this summer, and I'll be opening my books back up for consultations. There's going to be some changes with the magazine, and we're doing a lot of interesting polishing, you could say, of what we do at the Awake Space. So everything's on track, even though everything seems to have changed. And I wish I could share everything with you here on the podcast, but I'm not at liberty. But one day you'll hear the story and you'll be like, what the hell was that trip? As Sarah and I looked at each other in disbelief at how this trip was going, we went, well, there's another book in the series because that is how our life tends to go. So we're going to go to the Victoria and Albert Museum, and we're going to talk about astrology in history because there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of make it fit information when it comes to what's ancient, what's modern, and explaining the differences to you and put it in perspective. So there'll be a little bit of teaching and some history and looking at some cool art and finding the astrology in various places, whether it's the medieval period, ancient period, different forms. And it kind of hides in plain sight a lot of times, or it gets labeled as astronomy, but astronomy and astrology were the same subject until the 18th century. So just so you know, it was never considered bad. There were debates about what was proper use and what was not proper use. And some of those debates from the 10th century in the Islamic Empire are pretty funny to read through. You can look at Benjamin Dyke's work for information on that if you're a history nerd. But I thought we could use a walk. I thought we could hydrate together, sip our water, and understand that Mercury retrograde isn't the cause of all the bad things going on. We have a lot of changeable energy. I'm going to insert the end of June kind of predictions that I had in the 2026 year ahead that I did last year and called a change in the British government, in the UK government. And so with Keir Starmer having stepped down today, that fit right into the timing I had in the 2026 year ahead. Is there going to be change in the United States? Very possibly. We could see change. We could see change in July. We could see change at the end of the month next week. It gets really interesting as we go along from the 28th on. So it's an interesting time to be alive. Alrighty, so we're going to continue our walk. And actually, I'm going to put it up this way so you can see that beautiful building in the background. And we are going to go back the way it started. And this is just a beautiful little park. Lots of people come just to chill out, do good. So it might be a little sketch. But there are different. We're in Chelsea in London. It's a very quiet area. It's not, this part of Chelsea isn't really heavily touristic. It's more livable. And I love all the little parks in London. They make life very livable, lots of green spaces. And we're going to have a lot of people outside today because it is very hot. It's in the upper 80s and it'll be almost 100 degrees tomorrow. But you can see here, somebody's doing construction, but we have this beautiful park. And I just thought this would be a fun episode just to wander together with Mercury in the pre-retrograde phase. It goes retrograde, or it stations retrograde on the 29th. And Mercury retrograde won't be actually the problem. It's actually going to be, sorry, there's a sprinkler. Mercury retrograde isn't going to be the issue. It is really going to be Mercury moving back into a square with Saturn. That is far more intense. And we'll talk about that in July. So really, I know my camera lens is a little blurry, getting all that light coming in. That's okay. We'll live with it. I am letting go of perfection right now. I just want to get everything done, but isn't it not pretty? We can get that in. So we're leaving the park now. Um, okay. All right. Park. And we're walking back the way I came to get to the park. If you're in the Awake Space community, we took this walk together last week in the evening when it was a lot cooler. And now we're going to be heading towards the Victoria and Albert Museum and talking about history and art and astrology. And again, the Mercury retrograde, it isn't the problem. It's nibbles, it's redirection, it's reviewing, it's revising. It isn't the bad stuff. Okay. There's usually a lot else going on, and we do have a lot else going on. And I talk about that later on. I'll put that part that I recorded in. So get your tea, get your coffee, get your matcha, get your Red Bull, get your H2O. Now let's take this walk together. Boop. All right. So now we're heading to the Victoria and Albert. I walked a little bit of ways without you guys. And if you see sweat dripping off my face, it's because it is HOT hot, unusually so. Even for June, end of June, July. This is like maybe a couple of days in August in Great Britain, at least from my memory of having lived here when I went to university. We're walking down Sloane Avenue in Chelsea, and it's a lovely walk. We'll see. We'll see how I feel. I'm probably going to take off from here and walk some alleys. They're not dark alleys, so just shortcuts. Because it's only a quarter mile to the V&A. So this is what we're up to. And trying to pay attention and look at the screen as we walk. Here, it feels good. There's a little crosswind. But we're going to head down. Wish I was on the other side of the street because it's shady. But yeah, so with Mercury retrograde, it's annoyances, it's mix-ups. You do better if you stay cool, calm, and collected. The more you panic, the more you freak out, the harder things are going to be. It's kind of like getting caught in a riptide. All right. The more you panic, the more you're going to get sucked into it. So if things aren't going exactly to plan, there's a snafu. What you really want to look at is what else is on the way. Okay. What else is coming? What are the other possibilities? Not, oh no, it's not going the way I wanted it to. Because that's just going to make life harder. Certainly not going to make it easier. And it's just better for you to chill out a little bit and go, I mean, it's okay to be frustrated in the moment, but the faster you can take a deep breath, ground in a little bit, and go, what else can I do besides this? You know, how else can things manifest? That's where you're going to see more success. So we're gonna head down this side street here. And you know, if my recordings hadn't worked this morning, I wouldn't have thought of doing this. So sometimes plan B is actually better than plan A. Again, that Mercury pre-shadow. So we're just going to take it easy. I do not have the vision to cross without a light. So we're just going to take it simple. We're going to take it slow. And that's how I suggest you do the Mercury retrograde period. It needs to be very methodical and work within your capabilities. Don't push it. Don't try to rush things. Don't try to push things. There we go. We have our green walking in. And it's a busy road. We're on Brompton Road at this point. And we're going to head to the V&A. So, and I maybe should have taken a cab, but that wind feels nice. So hopefully you can still hear. So we're getting ready to go and hold tight. Ooh. All right. Press speak and you're going to head down Brompton Road to the Victoria and Albert Museum, which the V&A was the V&A was a special treat for me when I was in university because it's free. And I did take a membership because I've gone a lot and I like to support museums. And I'm going to go have maybe some lunch there. And it's not a whole lot cooler than it is outside in there, which was a little bit of a disappointment. I was hoping the marble would keep things cool, but it doesn't necessarily. So all the pretty things as we go down Brompton Road. So but yeah, so it's a bit of a long walk. So we're going to do this in chunks. Yeah. This is more of a neighborhood. Again, a little less touristy in here. It'll be more touristy when we get down to the view. So, okay, this is a really pretty shady part, but I'm going to show you my view because I love walking down this road and seeing this. So hold tight. So I'm going to look at that. That's a Roman Catholic church. Isn't that beautiful? So, all right. So off we go. We're very close to the V&A. I'll show you my favorite museum. Whoops. And we'll talk about the history of astrology. So, first of all, ancient astrology isn't better than modern astrology. They are a continuation of understanding and knowledge. Math changed over time. There were theories about math that the Greeks did, but Greek astrology, Hellenist astrology, isn't actually the most ancient. We have to go back to Sumeria for that. And Vedic and Western astrology branched off from Chaldean astrology. And there's a lot of claims about how long different forms of astrology have been around, but we actually only have records that go back to about 5,000 years. And that's because things were done on, say, tablets, or papyrus. And so there is when we find records, we're really, really lucky. It is not true that the ancients could not read and write. We've been developing language for a very long time, and astrologers were known to be the ones who could read and write. So that's something important to remember. Astrologers were scientists, alchemists, priests, and priests were the educated up until Gutenberg created the printing press. So all of that, uh, all of the arguments people make from an uneducated point of view do not validate their positions. Okay. So astrology is a continuum. The type of astrology I practice goes back to the 12th century. It has roots in the Islamic Empire. And they weren't stealing information from the Greco Roman tradition. They were actually expanding upon it. And that's something that's important to remember. So we're walking towards the entrance of the Victoria Albert Museum. And isn't that a cool outbuilding? And we're on Thurlow Avenue. And you can see we're very close to the entrance of the Victoria and Albert Museum. So we're going to walk up the ramp together, and then we'll head over to the medieval room and we'll talk a little bit about why astrology and astronomy are interconnected, why they're not really separate in the way we think of that, contrary to what astronomers would say. It's funny enough, they put down astrology, but they've never studied it. They just keep giving the same tired arguments. And what they're arguing against is the happy astrology that you see online. And it honestly has always existed. It's not a new thing. People will take advantage of people who really need support or feel desperate. And again, there are arguments that go back to the 12th century for that. So we're going to walk through the doors. Oh, it is. Okay. So just be with me as we walk through here. That is not Venus. That is an on. That is translated into a cross. And that image with the entwined scepter is actually the sign of a healer. And that is included and incorporated in the Mercury find. So Christianity co-opted a lot of the visual symbols used in other belief systems. And astrology isn't a belief system per se, but it has been used in belief systems. So that's important to know. So we're going to walk through here. Pardon the size. These are tired size. We have old manuscripts. So this is the Acts of the Apostles. And these were handwritten in order to be a scribe. You were a priest. Again, astrologers come from that lineage that goes way back, even before Christianity, of course. And it's very human. Oh, look at the beautiful work on that. Illumination, the illustration, very, very stunning. I've been down here before. Here's a timeline. So, historical events in architecture. So, in 300 CE Common Era, it wasn't until we moved past here. So, the Arabs, the Muslims were conquered Spain, the Iberian Peninsula in that time period. So, there was a lot of astrology being done there because it was part and parcel of the intelligentsia. Now we get to 900, and in the 10th century is where zero started being used in math, and that is when using aspects was possible. That is when Placidus became possible. That's when circumnavigation became more than the to create circles. And so if you're in the V&A, there's all kinds of cool stuff and exhibits. I'm going to walk to a place that I found. Let's see. Uh, I love all of these. I look at the artisanship that was used to make these beautiful pieces. You know, some people really enjoy, physical paintings. So, as a fiber artist, I'm fascinated by the tapestries and the brocades. And this place, this would have taken someone a good part of a lifetime to complete. So it's fun. Effigies were used for burials. Okay. Ah, oh man, look at that. That's wonderful. Ah, and fun fact, the whole reason that Galileo Galilei went to jail was because he was using Copernicus's work, which used the Islamic scholars' work, and it was a bit of a competition. The church didn't want the Islamic scholars' work to be shown. And this was one band trying to find the place I went before. It's a big understand. One of the exhibits. We're going to move towards. Oh, yeah. You saw it unless they rearrange things because that never happens in a museum. It had a really nice collection of navigation tools. See, if not, I'll put a clip from what I was talking about in the teacher. Here we go. These statues, beautiful. You know, even if you have religious trauma, put that to the side and think of the hands that made these and the lifetime and effort that went into making these things. There was no prefabs, there was no using. There we go. And these are effigies from burials. That's what it will look like when you walked in. I think maybe I'm in the right spot. We'll find out. I'm not going to edit this up a lot, so you can always fast forward. Maybe I'm not. Let's see. And let's see. Oh, no, you have to go back the other way. This is the way we came. But we'll get a different view. How's that? You see all the statues. And a lot of the ones that have fig leaves on them that are older, those fig leaves were placed on later because in the medieval period, it was not puritanical. So, in the same way, bodies were viewed very differently. So, you're like, why are you going through the medieval era? with all the church stuff. And it is because there was also a great deal of really cool astrology happening. So you'll notice they were still using triangles to create the sphere or an arc because using zero was complex. And so, I wonder if it's up there. Maybe. All right, we can go up one more. So, and we're walking up the stairs. Let me tell you, it's still hot in here. And sweat is dripping down my face. Oh, just so I think it's actually on this floor. It is. Okay, so here we go. Check out this chest. So much work went in, so much expertise. This was not done by somebody just learning. Look at this wooden altarpiece. All the figures. It would have taken a lifetime to come back, you know. And of course, the paintings, I think that might be, is that Van Eyck? No, it's Francisco Diasona. But you also notice that they had very similar styles. This was the style at the time. And this piece was done 1505 to 1513. So the spinning wheel wasn't even invented yet. People used drop spindles. Just to put it in perspective. Everyday items. And look at that. Music. Beautiful. And then we move through and we see the tapestries. These two took an extraordinary amount of time to make, to weave, and every thread was hand spun on a spindle, on a drop spindle, until about 1530 when the spinning wheel was invented. Yes, I am fiber. So you're getting more than an astrology education. And I think it's in here. Is it? No. And here we go. And the early 1500s were really the crossover from medieval to Renaissance. So you're starting to see that time period. Philosophy was changing. You know, things were very predeterministic before the Renaissance. And in the Renaissance, you started to see the beginnings of new thought as well. And yet there was a fight with the church and the Islamic Empire. And look at these beautiful, there was artistry even in instruments of death. And one of the ways you can tell something is horse armor is it has separate plates in the legs, so it's reticulated. And here it is. This is what I was looking for. Okay, so they would say these are navigation instruments, and they are. There's compasses, a globe with a compass, an astrolabe, because you use the stars to navigate. Astrology and astronomy were not separate. So astrologers would have used these very same tools to mark where things were in the sky. How fascinating is that? This would have been marking the degrees. They could use zero in the 1500s. So they had the ability to mark things into a more standardized form of degrees, more accuracy. That's why the Hellenists don't rely on aspects in the same way as quote unquote modern astrologers. Modern astrologers are actually modern astrologers aren't 20th century astrologers. Modern astrologers are Renaissance and beyond. Okay. Post 10th century. So late medieval, early Renaissance. And so that you can tell is hot. That is very, very important. Stand behind here and you can see a harpsichord. This was the harpsichord happened before the piano. And it doesn't make a harpsichord worse than a piano. It doesn't make it better than a piano. It was an evolution of an art form. And that's what we can say about astrology. It isn't that ancient astrology isn't good. it was what there was. Whereas modern astrology is on the shoulders of that. It has an evolution. There is a problem when you think something ancient is better than modern. Doesn't mean everything is perfect in a modern era. It isn't. However, when we base our understanding on things the way ancients did, we make the mistake of looking at things as all good or all bad, dichotomous, black and white, and that does not serve our best well-being. So we can study using discernment. Now, if you're interested in understanding how medieval period astrologers thought, you can read the works of William Lilly. He was an astronomer and astrologer. Most of the great scientists up until I would say, mid 17th century or mid 18th century were astrologers as well. There's rumors that Sir Isaac Newton was an astrologer. We know Carl Jung was an astrologer. I've translated astrology much like I have for Healing the Money Wound. He translated astrology in his psychological work, as did Roberto Assagioli, who was a psychoanalyst. And we know that because there was a secret library that was opened in 2012, and there were hundreds of letters and files and journals. So there we go. Come on. Say, do you need it? Mm. I'll get it. No. I don't see you. All right. We're in the glass section, and I'm actually heading to the members area to get a well-deserved drink. And we will resume when I go through the Great Britain from Bronze Age through the medieval period section of the museum. But I really need a break. Oof. Oh, my. Look at those tapestries. So, we're in the 1600s, and this is where things are starting to change. Why am I talking about history when we're talking about astrology? And that is because astrology, from an interpretive point of view, is influenced by philosophy. And we are moving into a new period in Europe with the Renaissance, which leads to industrialization later in the 18th century, where things really change. So you'll notice we're moving into more realism in the carvings. It comes back. Look at that. We'll take a look at this. Time and death and still life. Well, people are really looking at time itself. Death is very much a part of life. We've got memory of the plague at this time. It is people don't live very long. There's not good sanitation. The London fire has happened, and people are curious. All right. It's a bit more of the Flemish school than the English school. Dutch domesticity. There we go. Portrait of a man. And there we go. So, see, I was right. It is more Dutch. I had an amazing art history education in 1985, where my host mother's nephew was the head of the University of Louvain's art department. And let me tell you, I learned a lot. So, now, because Galileo got in trouble because he was using Islamic work, astrology it was starting to get tucked away just a little bit and more done. Oh, look at that. That's cool. Look at that. It's a relief. You can see that. So, and notice things are getting a little less ornate and yet more so. The still life and still life in other languages is actually a dead nature, naturellement in French. So, looking at fascination, what happens after. That's where a lot of our current beliefs come from, not actually ancient. And that's why I'm always asking you to use your discernment. Is it resonating with you because it's your cultural programming in a new package? Is it your cultural programming that you're resisting in another way? But it seems because you were raised to believe thus and so that the language is just a little different. The idea that it's Asian, that must be true, and it was written down, and it must be true because no one ever wrote a falsehood. Of course they have. Just because it's old doesn't mean it's wise, including people. There you go. Look at that. More wars were fought over tapestries and spices than land. That tapestry would have taken so long to make. Here's another one. Look at that. Let me go look at the date on that because that might have been when looms cards had come into play and that allowed for greater, bigger pieces. Oh, this lace. Okay. Is that needle lace? Ah, yeah. So that would have taken a lifetime. That would have taken a lifetime to make. We put down handcrafting today. And that's a marketing job. It really is. It's a marketing job because after the French Revolution, which did not help the people, it created the business class. And we're kind of facing the repercussions of that today. And in bringing forward factories and the car looms. Yeah, this was 1718 to 24 was this one's giant one. I would have had a car loom to it. That would have been done individually, not by hand on a hand loom. So it would have been different. And the looms, this would have been about the maximum size because it's painstaking to make a tapestry on a loom. And all of this is related to astrology. I will, in the Patreon, give you dates and understanding of what was active at that time. We're heading, I think, towards a new renaissance for ourselves because we're going to have to change how we do things. It's not going to be the expansion of understanding and philosophy that drives us forward. It will be the necessity and probably climate change. I'm afraid there's more the ice about to. So, 2 years. Please be wary. We're starting to pay attention to time. So now Pluto was in Aquarius in 1700s. Later, more around the French Revolution, but I think we're close to that timing in this gallery. There's another clock. Aquarius, as ruled by Saturn, is time, not by Pluto doesn't rule it, of course. Yeah, we're not into the revolutionary era yet. We're getting very close. Pluto was in Capricorn, also Capricorn is time. With Saturn, Saturn is the timekeeper. Uranus was not discovered yet until 1787, and a lot changed then. That's when manufacturing really kicked up into gear. And remember, astrology doesn't cause anything, it reflects it. So there is a distinction. It's important to understand what was going on, to understand how to interpret the astrology, the philosophies, the politics, the science, the art. They're all reflective of cultures ebbing and flowing and new ideas and old ideas merging, blending. Because astrology incorporates philosophy. Remember, we're the mother and father of science. So it's beautiful. This is we're getting much closer in 1850, or sorry, 1750s, 1760s. We're moving into that era. Beautiful, beautiful pieces. All of these done by hand, right? So, and so just like you're afraid of AI taking your job, imagine how the artisans felt as factories and pre-made things started to come in, molds started to come into play. Miniature suits. And this is very close to the Revolutionary era. A mannequin for all that handwork. Just gives sense. There we go. Handmade. And so imagine when the machines came into play and people lost their livelihoods. They were just AI. Right? And so we either learn to adapt to changing technology or you collapse. And those are our options. We don't have a lot more options. You can rebel all you want. You don't rebel cleverly, then you have a problem. Look at those music on the streams. Look at that. Where it's stunning. There we go. I'm getting a lot better at framing the video as I walk and talk. Look at those. And I'll switch it over. This is beautiful. Dress, and it's about 1785. So now we are still in the American Revolution. It says characterized by a close-fitting back, the robe à l'anglaise, or the English-style dress, was fashionable across Europe in the 1770s and 80s. This was from the Dutch Republic. So remember, this, and this was when fabric started to get more a little bit more affordable because they started making it in mills. And I wish I could find the essay. I found it years ago, but there was an essay from the 1700s, around this time period, really like 1760s, where John, and not then even Adam Smith, was warning about the dangers of the Industrial Revolution because it was leaving people behind economically. And kind of forcing servitude in a very different way, even than the serfs experience in the medieval period. So there we go. So meanwhile, let's see where I'm going. We're going to go to the factory. So, yeah, we're gonna come. That's the members' room stairs. Okay. Sorry for the dirty game. Ah, I know. Okay. Okay. That's better. There's something specifically I want to see. Glass. You see what you see. You know, as sure. This is a typical Roman at that time period. Trying to make it so I don't have to edit this too much. But the thing is, everything influences how we interpret the astrology. Astrology itself just is. It's our interpretations that make the difference. We do need to have standards. If we don't have standards, then we can do a lot of harm. And we have to look at our intent as we're interpreting and understanding the difference between mundane astrology, which deals with big picture, weather, political events, etc. It's really not personal. It would feel personal, but it's not personal. Whereas when we're looking at these things, this is more mundane. To the person who owned them, they may have been treasures in person. Again, we see clock. And let's see. Clock is from 1740 to 715. 715 clocks became a huge deal at the end of the 1600s. We were really beginning to learn time. During the Greco-Roman era, an hour could last as long as 80 minutes, and as short as 20 minutes. Their idea of hours was not the same. The 60 minutes came later. Yes. And kind of going back on time here, that would have been Hindu. But imagine no power drills, no power saws, chisels, and tools. Which that apprenticing. We lost that. Today, we don't have apprentices and journeymen in the same way as your plumbing, electricians. People think because they read a book, they're an expert on the subject. And it really isn't true. So now this is more modern, and this is kind of displaying what's in a different part of V&A in a different museum. Like this was the spitting image of puppets. Was Margaret Thatcher, very clever, but this is a funny show. They have a TikTok account for looking at puppetry and have you. But we're walking towards one of the only depictions of outright astrology that I have noticed in my wanderings through the museum. Because again, the navigation instruments they would attribute to navigation, astronomy, is like, yeah, astrologers did that. But the reason why it wasn't popular and you didn't see it as much in art or decor was it was the purview of the 1% at the time. And they may not have wanted people to know, not because it was taboo, but because it was, but because it was, that's, our example, it would have kind of outed them for why they were so strategic. So that's why astrologers who are good, but we don't talk about it because confidentiality is trust. So, or I think that's it. And, and this is from the 1600s now. We're going back into time. As we move into the age of reason, which we just came from, which was the 1700s, people were starting to separate astrology and astronomy, the arts from the sciences, which they hadn't been separated before. It was probably important evolutionary wise in our thinking. People were looking for evidence-based information. That's important. But here, I'm going to show you one thing I found is directly astrological. There's Mercury and Venus. All right. All right, we're going to go see what they have to say about that. So the Renaissance came after 1500, and you saw a little bit more astrological references in that time period because people were really into ancient Rome and Greece and the Renaissance. And there was more cultural sharing between Great Britain and the continent. As you moved into the Age of Enlightenment, those things started to change. And Great Britain, as it built its empire, had a heavy influence on the rest of the world. And the logic, reason started coming across. And the more people talked about astrology in public, the more popular, the more the popular astrology became the norm, the more it was easily refuted because people weren't providing evidence, they weren't providing process, they weren't showing how they got to their answers. And so even I will correct people because astrology isn't about fighting. Astrology is process and philosophy. But we don't just make up philosophy, we study philosophy. And from there, we build and come to conclusions through observation and not necessarily correlation, but sometimes. Anyway, this was a very different Awake Space podcast. I hope you liked it. And next week's will be as well. And let me know if you like this format, and we'll see what else we can come up with. I won't be in England right away, but tell me what kind of formatting you like. I'd love to hear from you, especially if you're a member of the Awake Space community and regulars. And I think it's time to charge my phone and get some shade and cool air. Thank you for following along.